Last year, I spent a lot of time getting better at 3D art. I moved from Autodesk Maya to Blender, and I tried my hand at a bit of pixel art as well. The current art in the game is this low poly, flat shaded style, and while it's very easy to make assets that are cohesive in this style, it's very hard to make anything expressive, like a human face, because, well, lack of detail is literally the style. I think that the game would be better off with a different look now that I am capable of giving it one, and at first I was gravitating towards something like Caravan Sandwich or Sea of Solitude, using little to no textures, relying on vertex colors and decals, which would mean no UVing. However, I really like the look of Valheim and Ultrakill. I realized that it would be easier to express a bit more with at least some textures. I think what I actually want to try is pixel art wrapped around 3D models instead of low-res retro textures, and I want to try and keep each pixel the same size to help make things cohesive. This unfortunately means a lot of UVing. After having a look around, I found Cloud Gardens and Garbage Country by Thomas Vandenberg, which is pretty close to what I had in mind, except I want to make use of PBR rendering. I want to use normal maps and metal maps and roughness maps and all that other stuff to try and make the pixel art textures interact with light a bit differently. As someone who lacks a natural talent in this department, the cost of experimentation with art is always going to be higher. So without further ado, let's get right into it. To start off this little endeavor, I've borrowed some concept art from Eduardo. I started by modeling little components from the concept art, the rings and bars that make up the structure of the corridor. I'm also using this grid texture to try and line up each pixel and make sure they're all the same size. Doing this by hand is time-consuming and unfun, but luckily I've found this add-on by our man Thomas that will at least get the size of a face right, and then I can just move it wherever I want. In light of this discovery, I think I might try and make a little trim sheet for this. Okay, so I immediately got distracted by procedural edgeware. I realized that texturing large surfaces by hand is going to be too slow, and I wanted to make use of procedural materials. And during my search, I found this. Since then, I have been trying to get procedural pixel art edgeware, which this sort of is. It unfortunately does require vertex painting though, which isn't ideal because it means we need more geometry. And it means it doesn't work if I just drag it onto another mesh. So this may have been a failed experiment and I should probably get back on task, but it was fun, nonetheless. I'm feeling pretty good about this. Well, not really. This material isn't really usable, but it does, I feel, highlight the potential. I mean, I know those blue beams look terrible, but the different roughness and metallic values per pixel on the panels, I think, kind of show what I'm aiming for. Now that I have some nicer panels that are a bit more subtle, I've moved on to procedural rust. Using this slider, I can control how rusty the metal is, and this looks good, but after watching this video by Flothar, I think some normal maps would make it look real good. In this video, he sculpted his and baked them out, but I want to do mine procedurally. Using the same noise that we used to create the rust, we can generate height values that we can use as a bump map. This gives us some nice per pixel normals, which I think look a lot better. My concept artist has just sent through some stuff, so I guess it's time to put this little experiment to rest and go try and make some environments that look like this. I started by blocking out the main room when I realized that the walls would probably look better and be easier to texture with something to split up the surface. So I opted for some vertical pillar things that will probably be made out of metal at some point. Alrighty, so I made some procedural materials for the trim sheet and then used it to start texturing the block out and, well, it looks fine, but I think at some point in this process I forgot that this is supposed to be a sci-fi facility and not an underground car park. I think I just saw the wall stains in the concept art and went, ah, yes, concrete. I will be redoing this, but silver lining, look at those rivets. They're just expressed with a normal map and a slightly higher smoothness value. So in that sense, experiment successful, this art style will work. But yeah, I gotta do some more stuff to bring this concept art to life. I hue shifted the metal bar material to be more blue and replaced the concrete with the metal panel texture from earlier. I gave the wall geometry this indented or corrugated look, and I think this is a vast improvement. Moving on, I started modeling the walkway, roof supports, and the overseer's office using the metal materials created in the first experiment. So far, the scene is looking alright, but it's missing its smaller pieces like railings, pipes that lead nowhere, and doors that lead places. That's much better. Behind these doors, we're going to have some corridors. I started by making some floor panel variations before moving on to a doorway junction thing that would be our connection to the overseer's office. I I wanted to try and use the same texture that I created earlier, but I must admit, when doing the walls, it did occur to me that I might have gotten as much use out of it as possible. Walking around the scene in Unity, it is quite apparent that some measurements might be off. The catwalk feels way too high, and the room doesn't feel that big. This could have been avoided if I playtested the block out first, but I got a bit carried away adding details. I think 50 pixels per meter may also be a bit much. For context, Minecraft by default is 16. I think maybe I'll give 32 pixels a try another time. Anyway, I'm pretty confident that I can make assets and environments with this sort of look. I also want to give Blockbench a go, but I've spent way too much time playing with pixels already. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.